Hi there, this is John Keirstead from Arctic Spas Vancouver Island, and today we're going to do another video to kind of give you an overview on Arctic Spas, as well as the three distinct lineups that we have: the Core Series, the Classic Series, and the Custom Series hot tubs. So to start with, I'd like to give you a little bit about why Arctic Spas. A lot of people, when they hear that, they don't associate Arctic with hot tubs, because Arctic's cold. Well, we manufacture spas in the most northerly facility manufacturing facility of spas in the world, and Edmonton, just outside of Edmonton, Alberta, and it's quite a cold environment. And so from the beginning, when we first started making spas, we started making them very similar to the way other manufacturers made them, and we ran into a lot of issues that you wouldn't normally run into if you're building and selling spas in a warm place. So we had some other aspects that we had to consider. When it's minus 40 outside or even minus 50, these things have to be insulated a lot differently. So we're going to show you the underside, and some of the other videos talk about our construction a little bit more, but I'll touch on that as well, because there's some basic things that are universal between the three lines of spas. One of them, of course, is the perimeter heat lock system that we use for insulation, as well as the fact that we're putting our equipment inside that insulated area so that it's protected from the environment. Now, the interesting thing we found out was that when you build spas for a super cold place, it can go anywhere. Insulation works both ways. So we can put these in warm places and they're just more efficient. Will you notice the difference on your monthly bill as much in a warm place? Probably not as much, but in a cold place, you'll certainly notice a big difference in the cost of operation, as well as there's some built-in freeze protection that our design allows. And largely, the biggest difference between Arctic Spas and other companies is the construction of the spas. And we have other videos again on that as well. But I wanted to give you kind of the fillet of the basic things that separate Arctic from a lot of the other products that are on the market. And so we'll start with that. I've got one spa here opened up with the doors off of the cabinet that will help you to understand what I mean when I say perimeter heat lock. If you look at this spa, we've taken the doors off of all sides, and that right there is a unique thing about an Arctic Spa, is that it's got access doors. Whether it's a cedar cabinet or a no maintenance cabinet, you'll see that there's at least access on all sides of the spa, right? So we can remove these doors, and the doors we've actually built sort of like a cooler lid, if you think of the lid of the cooler, so that insets here. There's a frame here so that there's no gaps, so that air can't escape. In the old days, we used to just trim this, and there's a little bit of a gap there, but it's still a lot better than the systems that you normally see. You'll see where the equipment in the spa is usually, on most spas, they kind of have a barriered off area, and they put the equipment and everything there, and then they put a panel of wood or plastic in front of that. But essentially, that equipment is outside of the insulated area. On an Arctic Spa, our equipment is inside the insulated area. That's a distinct difference. So whether you're getting a Core, a Classic, or a Custom Series Arctic Spa, you're going to have the equipment inside the insulated area. This is critically important for cold places, because if the power goes out or something goes wrong, or even just with normal operation, there's a lot of heat that's produced by these pumps, and we utilize that heat to help heat the spa, because our thought is that it was going to cost a lot more to run a spa in a cold place. So we wanted to make sure that any source of heat was being utilized to heat the spa. Now that just makes sense, but on the vast majority of spas that are out there, you'll actually see, because they build and sell them primarily in warm places, they actually vent the side that has the equipment on it. So you'll see there are these open vents that are allowing heat to escape from that area, because as those motors heat up, most motors on spas run between 50 to 75 degrees Celsius, so quite hot, right? They're literally heaters. So that heat is actually being lost to the environment. So on every other spa, they vent that heat to the environment, and then they turn on a separate heater to heat up the hot tub. Well, that doesn't make sense to us. So we've always designed in this fashion. because we want to utilize that heat. Now, a couple of other benefits that happen as a result of that is we don't put the insulation on the shell, right? The shell itself is fiberglass, and so the fiberglass can actually transfer the heat back and forth. So, you know, on a spa like this one, you're like 300 gallons, 350 gallons of hot water inside an insulated box. So if your power ever went out, this is like a giant hot water bottle sitting in this insulated box, and it's going to radiate and keep everything inside there protected. The other thing is that when it's in its normal operation, the heat from those pumps heat up the air inside this cabinet to a temperature that's hotter than the water. You know, normally the most we keep the temperature of the water is about 40 degrees Celsius, which is 104 degrees Fahrenheit. Well, if the pump is operating at 50 degrees, it's 10 degrees Celsius hotter, and that's the minimum. Like I said, they're usually from, ours run at 50, many run at 60, some run at 70 degrees Celsius. That's their normal ambient AMB, you'll see on the label of the pump. That's the normal ambient operating temperature of the pump. So it's always producing that heat. It's designed to run in that. You know, we get criticized. Some people say, well, if you do this, your pumps will overheat. Well, that'd be true if it was in a small barriered off area like they had and I didn't vent it. But in this case, the water actually acts as a heat sink, sucking the heat from, because the temperature in the cabinet's hotter than the temperature of the water, the heat transfers directionally into the water. Now, if for some reason power shut off, that would work in reverse. The air temperature would start to cool down in the cabinet, and the heat from the vessel or the tub itself, the hot water bottle, would radiate in, keeping this above zero so you don't get any freezing. And that was really the thing. Every year, you know, people have these nuisance trips of their breaker, and they'll end up freezing a hot tub. And short of you know, a hand grenade, there's not much more you can do to damage a spa than freeze it, because all of the lines and stuff in there, you know, water's that weird substance that expands as it turns into a solid, and it actually cracks all of the things. And on a lot of spas, these pipes and stuff are all encased in a foam, and so that expansion happens. There's busted fittings all over the place, and you don't know where they are. The nice benefit to this type of a design as well is that if you look, I can see everything in the spa from every side. So if I ever have to actually service it or do anything, I can get into here and I can see if I have to chip out foam just to notice that there's something wrong here, it's going to be very hard. How do I know it's there? How do I know that there isn't another spot that has a problem, right? The great advantage to what we're doing is that when a technician comes out to diagnose a problem on an Arctic Spa, they simply take the panels off and take a look, and you can see, oh, there's some water down there. Maybe there's a problem. So they check. They can see everything. The key to keeping the costs down when it comes to maintenance or fixing or maintaining this spa for a long, long period of time is how easy is it to diagnose a problem? How easy is it to actually get to the spot that needs a repair? The one thing I can tell you about all Arctic Spas, whether it's a core, a classic, or a custom series spa, is it never has to end up in a landfill. Most other spas, there comes a point where the cost to actually excavate all of this foam out of there and try and find a problem and then fix it becomes more than the spa is worth. The nice thing about an Arctic is that if anything goes wrong, we can always retrofit and we can always refurbish this spa up to current standards at any time, which I think is a real advantage. So this particular spa is Totem. It's been upgraded. So this is a classic series spa that's been upgraded to a custom series. So that's the only thing in our mix that kind of confuses people sometimes, is that a classic series can be turned into a custom series simply by changing the computer, right? Normally we use on the core and the classics, we use a Gecko YE5 pack, which is an extremely reliable, excellent pack, but it doesn't have the ability to run Spa Boy. And Spa Boy is our kind of our universal it's like an AI, you know, it's looking after the water, it's measuring, it's testing the water, and it's doing a lot of the work for the customer, so it makes it easier. So we get a lot of people that say, well, I really like this design, but I want that spa boy. So we made it so it was possible for them to do that. So in the Classic series, you can upgrade them to a custom if you like that particular shell. Of course, all of the customs have the ability to have spa boy. Now, normally, if this was a Classic series, you could still use a salt generation system on here that's generating chlorine from salt, and that's called our Onzen system, and that's available on both the Core and the Classic series. So Onzen works on time. So, you know, if you think of a traditional maintenance program, you've got a floater in there and you open up the thing. Depending on how far you have it open is going to determine how much sanitizer you're getting into the water. Well, in this case, we're telling the system, turn the Onzen system on for 4 hours or 6 hours or 8 hours. I think 8 hours is default. And that's going to produce a certain amount of sanitizer in the water. If you use your spa more, then you're gonna have to increase that. If you only use the spa on the weekends, maybe you decrease that. So there's a little bit of a learning curve, learning out what setting you need to have Onzen at so that it sanitizes at the level that you need. And that's just an adjustment that's individual to each family that uses the spa. Right? Whereas Spa Boy will automatically make that adjustment because it's testing the water every 10 minutes and it's testing both the sanitizer level and the pH level of the water and making adjustments to the sanitizer level. You still have to adjust pH. We're trying to automate that. It's a little trickier to automate that, but we're working on that as well. And I expect in the next couple of years that'll be something that many people that have Arctic Spas will be happy, because we try to make any new technology that we come up with, we try to make that backward compatible so that if you've already got one of these spas, remember I told you it's never going to end up in a landfill. Well, one of the nice things that is when you purchase from Arctic is if you see a new technology that's introduced on our stuff, you're going to be able to go, hey, I want that on my spa. Well, we can add that to your spa at a later date, which is another benefit of this kind of open concept of design, is it allows us to go in there and add stuff too. In fact, you'll see on some spas that we have just kind of blank spots where jets could go, and that's because if you look, this spa here, for instance, this is a Classic, also upgraded to custom. I can tell because the top side is different and it's got the gray cell. This gray cell is a Spa Boy cell. If this were black, that would be an Onzen cell. They're slightly different, but they do basically the same thing. That's where the electrolysis happen. But what I was just talking about is these blank spots. Well, why are these blank spots here? Well, because this particular spa can come with 1 pump and 12 jets, or 20 jets, or whatever the heck the number of jets is. I think it's 20. But it can also come with 2 pumps and double the number of jets. So if somebody decided, hey, I wish I'd gotten more jets, well, we can add jets. In fact, I could just add 2 jets if they wanted. But you can see there's the spots to already do that. If we didn't have these in here, then these jets would stick up. Like you see on this here, these ones don't have a recess. And that's because these are foot jets. So no one has to worry about getting their back against this or the back of their legs. Realistically, we never used to have recesses when I first started in the business, and it's pretty hard when you're floating in water. It's pretty hard to actually put your back against there. It's more for when you're sitting in a dry spa. So when people are trying out the seats, we don't want the jet to stick into their back. But if this actually had water in it, you don't really need the recesses because it's really hard to sit yourself right up against the edge. But just to make sure that jets aren't digging into people, we have these recesses. But those recesses are here because we want to make sure that if somebody wanted to upgrade this spa, they could. And so and you never know, maybe we'll have a new jet. You know, we have a new jet, you might say, well, if I'm going to put more jets in here, I may as well get that new jet. So we're always trying to think ahead with these. And you'll notice that all of our jets, for instance, on Arctic, all of the jets in the Classic and Custom series are removable, right? So these are a screw-in removable jet. They're also adjustable, so I can control the flow out of each jet in this spa, right? So if I wanted to have more pressure or less pressure or all the way off, think of it like a tap. You know, when you turn the tap, you can set it for a little bit of flow, a lot of flow, no flow. That ability is right there. You can just do it right at the jet. As well, on the custom series and classic series spas, the pillows are adjustable, right? So our pillows can be adjusted and they tilt as well. They can actually even be turned around. So I can turn this around and I can actually turn this the other way. So if somebody wants to be, you know, they want to be pushed more closely to the lounge area or in the seating area, they can turn this around and find the perfect comfort level for them. Right? So it's a nice, comfortable pillow. The pillows on our spas actually are different than a lot of the pillows that you see on other brands. Most companies use polyurethane. We used to use polyurethane. One of the drawbacks to polyurethane, though, is that over time it draws in water. And you know, this is spa water, so there's other stuff in that water that can cause this pillow to kind of get scungy and smelly and stuff over time. Instead, what we've used is EVA. EVA is used for the soles of a lot of shoes and stuff like that, but the most important aspect of EVA is, number one, it's very color fast, so it holds its color. If you think of Crocs, you know, the Crocs shoes, that's another common product that's made out of EVA. It doesn't absorb water, right? So we call it closed cell, so it doesn't absorb any water, so this isn't going to get that squishiness from water being inside it, so it'll last a lot longer. It's more chemically resistant than polyurethane. So that said, I do tell people, if you're going to be leaving your pillows in, I always have them so that they're up higher, right? So they're up to here. So the water level is usually at the bottom of the pillow. So I don't want this sitting in there, because over time, water is a universal solvent. That plus the water chemistry itself can cause these things to deteriorate if you leave them in. Lots of people take them out. If you take them out, they're certainly going to last longer, but you have to remember to put them back in when you want them, right? So some people have a little bin next to there that they keep them in. At the very least, make sure they're up out of the water. That's a recommendation if you want them to last a lot longer. The shell on all of the Arctic Spas, whether it's a core, a classic, or a custom, the shell is a self-supporting hull, which means there's no beams or anything underneath it to give it extra strength, and we're not relying on foam to reinforce it. So the shell itself has to be quite a bit thicker than you would see on other spas. And it has to be that thickness throughout the whole shell. You know, when these are made, it's like a giant pizza oven. You know, we put a piece of acrylic into this pizza oven until it gets almost molten, and then the acrylic gets sucked down into a mold. And as it stretches, it gets very, very thin. So at the bottom where it's stretched the most, the acrylic is actually quite thin. It's really just a fancy paint job at that point. Then this is upside down, and in the manufacturing facility, that's when we'll apply the vinyl ester skin coat and fiberglass. And so the vinyl ester is a resin that has a very strong bond to the acrylic, and then we use a polyester resin for the majority of the fiberglassing that happens, and we have to do this until it's roughly 8 mm to 12 mm in thickness, so you know, about a ½ inch in thickness. With the core series, it's a little bit different. On the core series, the shell is using a product called Elastocast. And Elastocast is a resin material, so it's a little bit different. It doesn't use the same fiberglass. It does have the same, you can still heat transfer through it, although the coefficient for heat transfer isn't quite as good as fiberglass. Glass is a very good conductor of heat. It still does conduct the heat well enough that we can still use heat lock. We can still heat up the spa with just the heat of the pumps, and so it's good. It's in a lot of states in the US, and our core product is made in Spokane, they don't allow us to do fiberglassing there. So you'll see a lot of manufacturers in the United States have switched to this alternate type of backing. It's quite good. There's a lot of technology that's involved in that as well. I still think that fiberglassing is better. It's more labor intensive because we have to hand roll it, whereas with the Elastocast you just apply it and it's done. So from a manufacturing point of view, it's quite a bit quicker. But if you think of a lot of the foam filled spas that are out there, the acrylic is usually backed with a layer of ABS plastic to get it a little bit thicker, and then this Elastocast, or some companies call it rigid bond, other companies have another name for it. They all have their proprietary name, but it's basically the same thing. It's a resin. Usually it's a very high density type of foam, and when that foam is at that density, it still has, it's not an insulating foam, it's a reinforcing foam. It's designed to make this structure rigid and not bend. If you see, when you're looking in underneath the spa, if you see supports and stuff underneath the seating and stuff, that should be an indicator to you that perhaps the shell is not as thick as it should be. Now, some companies will tell you it's good to have the reinforcement there, big people getting in here and water's heavy and all that. But the truth is if you make this thick enough, it won't flex. If it's too thin and I put a beam underneath it, or I put a support underneath it. Sometimes companies use pipe, PVC pipe, metal supports, wooden supports. They put that underneath there. If I fill that shell up now with water and people, it can flex, right? And when it flexes right over top of that structure that's supposed to be supporting it. And over time, if you do this every time people get in and out, every time you fill it and drain it and stuff like that, you can take plate steel. If you bend it enough times, it's going to crack, and so that can lead to long-term cracking. So it's very important that the shell be thick enough to start with. And you can see on a lot of spas that their shells are quite a bit thinner. On a custom series spa, we warranty the shell forever, right? So it's for as long as you own the spa. If that shell ever cracks, you've won the Arctic Spa lottery. If the fiberglass behind here is not supporting it and it's no longer holding water, you get a new spa. Nobody else does that in our industry. Now, classic series spa, the shell is made exactly the same way, but it only has a 10-year structural warranty. Why? Well, because classics were designed to be kind of a in-between price point, and warranty costs, that extra warranty costs money. So that's one way that we reduce the prices. The classic series has a less warranty than the custom series. For instance, you have 3 years on your pumps. Even though they're the same pumps we use on the custom series spa, or the same jets or the same fittings, we get 3 years on that instead of 5 years on the custom series. So you're getting a little bit more warranty for the same type of product when you order the custom series spa. Same when you go down to the core. When you go down to the core, the warranty is going to be a little bit less. Doesn't necessarily mean that the quality has changed at all. It just means that that's another component of the cost. And our idea with the Core Series product was to have a spa that is more affordable, because not everybody can afford a custom series. Not everybody can afford a classic series. So we have the Core Series as kind of our introduction series to spas. The reason why we called it Core was because it has the core design features that all Arctics have. You know, it's got the perimeter heat lock insulation. It's got access from all sides. It's got a well-built shell that can allow for heat transfer back and forth. It can be upgraded after the fact. It can be serviced at any time and never has to end up in a landfill. Those are kind of the core aspects of any Arctic spa. And so that's what they embrace. The other thing is on the Core Series spa, we tend to have more features on them. They're kind of a feature-rich spa. So they'll have lots of lights, lots of jets, lots of other options available on them. So you can get salt, you can get ozone, you can get even UV if you want that sort of thing. And we designed that product so that the core product could compete with anything else on the market. Then the classic was a step up from that. And then the custom was a step up from that. In fact, the classic series was our top of the line for 20 years. You know, that's why it's called classic. It's what got Arctic to where it was. So it's the most famous models design-wise from a seating point of view. It's also the classic cabinet, you know, with a top and bottom rail. It has the forever floor. That's another difference between core, classic, and custom, is the forever floor, which is that solid fiberglass floor, literally like having a concrete pad built into your spa. Well, that forever floor is only available on the classic and custom series Arctic spas. On the core, we have a vacuum formed ABS floor, which is much more like what you'd see on other spas, assuming they even have a floor. Lots of companies still don't put floors on their spa, which to me is crazy. You don't want animals and stuff getting under there. You should look at how the floor is attached as well. You'll notice on ours, there's no gaps or anything. Even on our core series, it's sealed all the way around, so animals and bugs and stuff can't get in underneath there. But it is a plastic floor on a core, not a fiberglass floor. A fiberglass floor is permanent. It will never degrade. You can always take it to the next place. It also makes the overall structure. We talk about on the classic and the custom series that the cabinet, the floor, the shell is a structural system, right? So it's a structural cabinet. Whereas on a core series spa, the cabinet is on the outside, but it's not got the top and bottom rails. The floor isn't, it's not a structural. This panel can be removed this way, and I can take this whole corner off, for instance. I can take this panel off from here, but it's not got the structure that the custom series will have, where you have this top and bottom rail, and these planks are actually put in the dado on the top and the bottom, and so this is sandwiched in there, so it's really, really solid. This will never pop off, for instance, right? Whereas this here can be removed, right? So that is a basic difference. And I mean, there's a hard cost to these top and bottom rails. I remember when I started in the spa industry, and I think I mentioned in the cabinet one, the cabinet video, all spas used to have top and bottom rails when I started. And then they took the bottom rails away, then they took the top rails away, and it's all in an effort to try and keep the price of the spa down. So that's part of why we've done this on the core series. The other thing you'll notice that's different on the core series is the top side control is a little simpler. The jets are a little smaller, right? But they still turn on and off. They still all pulsate, and they're all removable, but they're a little bit smaller, so they're a little less money. The pillow is adjustable. It's adjustable, but it's not on that rod, and you can't turn it around. So it's not quite as fancy as the one that you see on there. There is a water feature on it. This is like a little waterfall, and this can be backlit as well. On this particular spa, this is backlit, as well as the drink holders are backlit, and then there's an underwater light. So the core series is designed to really get people into hot water, right? You'll see also this has the Onsen system. So remember I showed you the other one was a gray electrode. This is a black electrode. That's really for technicians to be able to identify the difference between the two. So this is an Onsen saltwater chlorinator. So this will turn the salt that's in the water into sanitizer, and it'll do it for a specific period of time per day that is set. Default is 8 hours. Customers increase it or decrease it based on their use. And that's available. This is available with any YE pack. So you can get this on, actually you can get it on all series, but it's most common in the core and classic series. Spa Boy is only available if you have the upgraded pack that comes standard on a custom series spa. So that's for Spa Boy. And this is again an option that can be added at any time, but I would say that the vast majority of spas we sell have a salt system in them already, whether it's Onsen or whether, and you notice actually that this just screws in. Because when you use a saltwater system, you don't have to drain and fill the water nearly as often. This cell could fail, and so after a couple years this needs to be changed. You may not need to change your water. So this is going to allow us to bring it up out of the water and change it. It's important that this stay dry when we change this cell. The inside here, we don't want water to get down into this thing. If it does, then this will fail, and then you end up having to change the niche, right? This is going to allow it so you don't have to do that, right? So they can exchange it, and then you just put the cord back in there, and this screws back in, and you're back in business, right? So it's a nice feature. In the old days, we used to put the electrode there, and you needed a technician to come out and do it. And well, that was a service call. It cost people money, so we just made, we had people say, hey, it'd be nice if it was a cartridge. So that's what we did. We literally created a cartridge, and you can buy those cartridges, right? So I recommend anybody that has one of the salt systems, you should have one of these at home. so that when the computer tells you that this thing is failed or is failing, you're ready to have it installed and you don't have to go without or have to use chemicals for a short time while you're waiting to replace this, right? And it's like, I don't know, it's a 2-minute replacement to do. So these are available.
How often do you have to change it?
It depends on use. Most people, I tell them it's 6 to 18 months. The average of my customers for Spa Boy cells is about 14 months. For some reason, Onsen cells is about 16 months. But I've had many people go 2, 3, even 4 years with their cells. So it depends. The more it has to work, it's sacrificial. So over time, the electrode, the reason we made the electrode, so it is a cartridge, is because the process is over time, it slowly degrades. So it is a sacrificial process. And in all of these salt systems, when we use a salt system, when you watch the videos regarding salt, you'll also notice we have zinc anode that we use that helps prevent that from wearing as fast. It also protects the other metal components and stuff in the spa. So that's really the brief fillet difference between custom, classic, and core product that we have. The core is kind of our starting lineup. If you move up to the classic, it's our middle of the line, and that was the top of the line product for us for many, many years. And then in 2020, we decided to up it a notch, and we introduced the custom series, which allows you to pick and design your spa exactly how you want it, and then we'll make it custom for you. I hope that educates you a little bit. Hopefully you've got a whole bunch more questions you'd like to ask. If so, just send us an email or hit us up online. Our smart friends are waiting to answer your questions, so please go onto our website, watch the rest of the videos if you want to get really educated. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. I'm John Keirstead from Vancouver Island Arctic Spas.